everyone. Welcome back to LA Storytime. My name is Christy, and today we are going to talk about probably the absolute most toxic show on all of television. To be honest with you, I am not in a great mood today. I'm feeling a little triggered by everyone. And when it seems like it's everyone else, you know that it's you, right? So it's definitely me. But I figured if this is the kind of mood that it is a great time to talk about when I was probably at the lowest point ever in my life and my career, and how covering the most toxic show on television just really kind of pulled me a little deeper into that hole. To be quite honest, originally I was going to call this show Call Her Happy. Like that was going to be the title. Yes, it was a play on another very popular podcast called Call Her Daddy. So I thought that it would be great SEO was kind of the main point, but also I thought that this podcast was going to be me talking about how I got to this point in life I am now where I'm so happy all the time. I have so much joy and peace in my life, and I attribute a lot of that to leaving behind some of this really negative work that I was doing. But as you can see, today we're not so happy. So good thing it's not color happy. So let's just jump right in. We're going back to about 2018 to a career lowest of the low for me. At this time, Christy Reports on YouTube online had done very well. I had probably hundreds of celebrity interviews on my channel that were doing very well for me. I was monetized, I was making money, and I was getting known in Los Angeles and in Hollywood as an interviewer and as somebody that celebrities would stop and talk to when they had the opportunity to do that. I was very proud of what I had built, having my own outlet and being one of the first people ever to do that on a digital platform. But it all kind of came crashing down around me when, the whole point of doing all of that, or what I thought at the time, was because I couldn't get hired on TV yet as a reporter because I didn't have experience. I also didn't have a hosting reel of work to show anyone who could hire me. So that was why I had started the whole thing, just getting out there and doing it myself so that I would have something to show someone who could actually pay me and put me on a platform where, my friends and family could actually see me. But when that happened, that's exactly where it all went to. I was covering reality TV and I got very engrossed in the show Total Divas. If you guys remember that one, it was about WWE superstars, the women, and their work backstage and their real lives. It was a fascinating show, and one that really struck a revolution in the world of pro wrestling for women. That was really cool. And what it did was it sucked me back into that world. I had been a fan as a kid, and I'm covering Total Divas and running into those stars and interviewing them all the time. I started to watch the shows. So getting that involved in wrestling, of course, meant that as a host, I'm getting involved in covering that because now this is something I know about. It's something I'm becoming an expert in, where I'm keeping up on the current events of. If you're watching like 12 hours of that stuff a week, you want to make it worth it, right? So I started doing after shows and really seeking out those wrestlers on red carpets and at events to get the scoop from them, mostly because there weren't a lot of outlets covering that. It's huge, but it doesn't get a ton of respect in Hollywood for a lot of reasons that I understand now. So what all that covering wrestling did for me was it helped me get hired by the biggest wrestling company in the entire world. And the digital network that I worked for at the time, my mentor, Kevin Undergaro, Maria Menounos, they were detrimental in me getting that position at the biggest wrestling company in the whole world. I'm very grateful to them. That's all going to come back around in a little bit. But what being signed with this big company, my dream come true, meant was that I had to stop doing everything Christy Reports. I had to, my channel could still live there, but there was not going to be any new content on my website. I wasn't going to be doing any celebrity interviews or anything on my own at all. Additionally, if I did, that would be owned by the company that I worked for according to my contract. So I was completely hands off. I had to move to Orlando and I worked there for a year. So when that was over and I went back to LA, I was literally on a plane, one-way trip back to LA on the day my contract expired. And what the hell am I going to do next? I was so lucky at this time. Kevin and Maria helped me get a job at Sirius XM Radio, which is a huge deal. Of course, that is major, mega. And I was going to be producing Maria Menounos's daily podcast, which is really, a talk show on a huge platform. Now we use the word podcast for everything. I find it kind of annoying. But I was going to be producing for her every single day. We had a studio that was on her property, and guests would come. It was a lot of health and wellness stuff. I was learning things. I was loving it. And most importantly, I was working only behind the scenes. I was able to, chime in a little bit here and there on the microphone. That was allowed, but I was really in a headspace of, I think my on-camera career is over. This one thing I tried to do didn't work out, and not only that, but it wasn't anything that I thought it was going to be. It was an overall more largely negative experience than positive. And I had gotten some really good advice from my mentor, Kevin, at that time. He said, don't be a double loser. And I really liked that. And what he meant was, don't abandon the whole wrestling thing. Don't abandon all your knowledge, your knowledge of the history, your knowledge of current events, and the relationships that you've created with people that you can make content with. Don't be a double loser. And I thought that was such great advice, and it really, really was. So while I was thinking, my on-camera career is pretty much over, but maybe I can work in something maybe behind the scenes in wrestling, or, go back to TV production, I wasn't really sure. But it was pretty cool just hanging out, producing the Sirius show. I did that for about a year, and met people who have had such an impact on my life now from the health and wellness world. And I think you guys have probably seen too, that that's become something that I'm really passionate about, that I share about quite a bit, because it's a huge part of my life. So I was kind of cool with I guess that's just not for me being on camera. I guess I'm going to be a producer. Look at the big guests that I'm booking. Look at the great show that I'm making happen for someone who is a very successful host. So I felt, fairly proud of all of that. But also, I was so lost. I was so damaged from what had happened, what had all occurred over a year at, this big company that I really wanted to be at. I was just so downtrodden from all of that I really thought I was never going to be on camera ever again, which is so silly, because I believed in myself so hard. I never thought that I wasn't going to be the next Juliana Rancic. I think I've said that 100 times on here, but I cannot reiterate to you how much the thought that I may not become the next anchor of E! News in 2008 had never crossed my mind. So by 2018, 10 years later, hasn't worked out the way we thought. And what are we going to do next? So when Maria ended her show with Sirius, I was essentially out of a job. But they were always there to pick me up. Again, just so grateful to Kevin and Maria and the digital network, where I had worked at for many years and done hundreds of after shows with their digital network, was doing a lot of coverage. They cover reality TV and all other aspects of television and film. 90 Day Fiancé was really hot on their streaming platform. So, part of the reason why doing this podcast has been very hard for me is because I have a terrible memory. And I honestly don't remember whose idea it was. Nobody cares, because there are no original ideas. And when you're working with people who are your mentor and who are championing you, it doesn't really matter. So I don't remember if I said, let's do a show that is the news every single day. I think it came from, I was going to do something like that was general entertainment news. And then I think Kevin probably said, let's make it a little more niche. So what show warrants every single day up and coming news on, the current cast, the past cast, what's really gone down behind the scenes and what has happened since the show aired, what you're watching on the show right now. Have they already broken up? Are they already engaged? What show warrants that kind of coverage every single day? 90 Day Fiancé, right? Of course, I had been watching it since season 1, when it was just a nice, cute little show about people who actually were in love. So it seemed like a natural progression. I knew all the history, I knew all the spin-offs, I knew everything about everyone. And just having it be something that I enjoyed, I was already kind of abreast of everything that had gone down, even though there were several seasons into the original show and many of the spin-offs by this point. But it definitely seemed like we could find 3 to 4 stories every single day about the cast, and that people would be interested every single day. So I kicked off 90 Day Fiancé News Daily. And every Monday through Thursday, every single day, I would get up in the morning and just scour. I think the news gathering aspect of this is probably the most interesting to a lot of you, because it goes well beyond, the Google News search results, right? That's a very easy and a great place to start. And it's very easy. But this show, having such rabid fans and the stars of it becoming such a big deal when they were really just normal people, meant that there was this whole other dark, seedy underworld of social media commentary and people who knew the cast peripherally or in real life, leaking things about them. There were every other day there was something legal that came out about people, and there were public records, and there were things that we were learning about the cast that was the kind of stuff that usually was able to stay in the dark for a reality star. And it was really some dark, yucky stuff. I gotta say, kind of, from day one, you go, oh, there's so many stories, and this is great. Who's really engaged, who's really broken up. But then when you have to do, so that's what, maybe, 20 stories a week or more. Some get cut and whatever, they're not that great after you write them. But you're gonna go pretty deep. You're going to get pretty far into addressing every single rumor that people out there are saying. And that was part of what I did as well. It wasn't, I was looking at it in a way of like, I'm going to do this credibly. I'm going to show people that you can cover entertainment news and you can cover reality stars in a way that is just like hard journalism, right? In a way that has integrity and where you maintain journalistic ethics. I don't know why I just made little air quotes, because I think that has all pretty much gone out the window in this day and age, even though I'm not one to criticize our media like a lot of people are. But I really thought that I was going to cover this so credibly and be so really newsy about it and be a trustworthy source, that my coverage was going to kind of rise above all that icky stuff that some of the bloggers were doing, where that some of even the casts were kind of the content that they were trying to drive themselves. So I always wanted to report the truth, but also anything that was a rumor or any one little thing that someone said or made up would catch on like wildfire online, especially on Instagram. I remember being a big place for 90 Day Fiancé rumors and gossip. So I also reported on the rumors if I could either, corroborate them or prove that they weren't true. And a lot of times I would just go straight to the cast, which nobody does, because number one, they just think that they won't get a response, which you likely will, especially if something is incorrect. And they also don't go to the cast because they don't care if something's true or not. They want to report the most outrageous, clickbaitable story. I again thought if I handle things differently that I could stand out. And I think that's really what happened. I Again, because people could have gone anywhere online at this time and found all of these stories. But what I was doing, 90 Day Fiancé News Daily, really caught on quickly. And we got really big numbers on YouTube quickly. There was a lot of SEO involved in that. When, people are searching for certain cast members or certain storylines are going on, we know how to use titles to track and get people's attention. But what was happening was then those people were coming back. They were sharing it with their friends. They were commenting all the things that you want to happen with content, that nowadays there is so freaking much content out there that there's low engagement on almost everything. We did not have low engagement on 90 Day Fiancé News Daily with the audience, with the network TLC themselves, or for sure from the cast. Okay? Everybody was talking about this show, and some of them were talking to me about it. Some of them were talking about me on the internet. And you know, it comes with the territory. And when I realized how much dark, yucky conversation was going on about the stars, I really thought that they would appreciate me trying to handle things a little bit differently. And some of them did. Obviously, a lot of the stories are negative or unflattering things that people don't want out there. And sometimes they would repost it and, write something mean about me or dispute the story, whether it was true or not. I remember some of them were really game though. Larissa is the one star I think that everybody knows from that show. She would always repost our stuff. She was kind of in on the joke a little bit. Ashley and Jay were a couple that I reported on probably every other week, every other day. I'm sorry, and I mean I wouldn't blame Ashley if she like put out hit out on me. It was that aggressive. But she kind of got it too. And towards the end of me covering the show, I think we reached a mutual understanding. But there were other stars who were not as cool with it. And the network, like I said, we definitely had their attention as well. The place that I was working where these videos were living, they also did an after show for all the 90 Day Fiancé shows. And that had a panel of hosts. And that was very, very different because it wasn't news, it was commentary. They would sit down and watch the episode of the show, and then they would talk about their thoughts on the show. So what I was doing was very different, but sometimes I was being lumped in by the cast to people who were just sharing their opinion. And I kind of got on my high horse about that, having hosted my 500 after shows before this. I don't do that anymore. That's becoming a running theme in this podcast, right? Christy gets up on her high horse and gets, knocked the F down hard and fast. So I really thought that I was kind of above all that, and that I would get lumped in with the cast when they would be angry about something that was said on the after show. I remember one of the stars, Evelyn. You remember she was with Corey, and they were on several spinoffs. She was a very talked about person on the show, and she went in really hard on me one time specifically and said that I said things that I hadn't said, and it was just very weird, and it was a lot. And so I responded in kind in the way that, I thought was warranted. And that is my probably proudest piece of content that I have ever made. I will look for it to put it in here. And I looked for the script and I couldn't find it. But that day, Evelyn went online and then unleashed on, me and the after show host. And she really was a mean girl that day. And it was also October 3rd, Mean Girls Day, for those who don't know. So I wrote a very, I think, clever Mean Girls themed story about Evelyn being awful to everyone online. It's October 3rd. I'm wearing pink, and Evelyn is giving us full Regina George. And it was funny, and people loved it, and they got in on the joke. And I think stuff like that is where, like I say, a lot of the cast played along. They realized that's good for them. Anyone talking about them, no matter what you're saying, all publicity is good publicity. The network, however, did not feel the same way. I was putting out the things that they didn't want out there about their people. It was spoiling. I would always give people a warning when there were spoilers, but a lot of the times it was spoiling the storylines. So and so and so and so have already broken up. Someone's got a new girlfriend, or they're already married, whatever it was. So the network didn't love that, but they especially weren't keen on a lot of the legal stuff that I was putting out there. I did find some of my old scripts, and just going through that, I saw so-and-so's bloody arrest, Ashley smiling for another mugshot, which is so rude. Sorry, Ashley. So rude. But, there were some really things that painted the cast in a bad light. And remember, if you didn't watch those first couple seasons, remember earlier when I said this was just a nice, cute little show about people who actually loved each other at the beginning? It was, and you should go back and watch because it's fun and pleasant to watch. But this was around the time when I was covering the show when the casting really took a turn. The show was so hot that it seemed like they stopped caring about who they were giving attention to. This was the first time that it came out that some of the cast had, violence in their past, the kind of physicality that you wouldn't want to show someone in a future couple with. If you understand what I'm saying. Again, we're always trying to make sure the algorithm doesn't shadow ban us or what we're talking about. So that's why I tiptoe around things. But I specifically remember, the one of the stars, Jeffrey, who was on at this time, and then it came out that he had these horrible, horrible allegations against him, and that he had to answer to after he filmed the show, and he ended up going to prison for quite a while. I think he might still be there. So when I realized that those were the kind of people I was talking about, I also became a little less concerned about their feelings or not, or painting them in a good light. But the network not wanting those things out there, they kind of did what they could to block me, but there was nothing. Everything that I was reporting on, there were either court records for, or one of the cast had corroborated it or said it, or I was able to prove it in some way. So there was really nothing that they could do to me. However, they could keep their stars from appearing on the after show, which was something that the network that I worked, they really liked to do, have one of the stars on the show call in or come to the studio while they broke down the episode of the show. I don't blame the network at all for trying to shut me down, because the stuff that I was putting out there made the show and the cast really look like a different kind of people than what they were trying to portray. Specifically, there was one situation that is so sensitive. I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about it today, but I think we can speak really carefully about it. It's a couple who, this is many, many, many seasons ago. And, you could probably figure out who it is just from the things that they said. So I don't think I'm putting anything out there that people don't, that is additional to what I put out there at the time. There was a story that one of the couples had broken up, and there were some allegations of, physicality in their relationship by the wife. I reported on those allegations. And again, my terrible memory, that keeps me from talking about things sometimes, but I think this is really important. So I don't remember if her husband, after I reported on what she was saying, if he reached out to me, or I'm pretty sure what happened is that I would have reached out to him to get his side or to get his response. Now that I'm talking it out, I almost do remember writing a DM like, hey, this is what she's saying. If you want to respond, I will air what you have to say, giving a voice to both sides. That's that's what you do in journalism. That's what you do in news. And I was so shocked when at, I think, like 9:30 at night, one day I got a phone call from this husband in the couple that had broken up, whose wife had made these allegations against him. And he told me everything. Everything. I was shocked. I suspected that he had maybe had a little liquid courage, with what's all going on in these people's lives and all the scrutiny they're under all the time. I don't blame him for wanting to have a couple glasses of wine in the evening time. And that also made me, I also kept that in mind when I reported on it, that perhaps he had said more than he would have said otherwise. I'm a really good judge of if people are under the influence at all of anything ever from my years as a bartender. so I'm just really good at that. And I took what he said with a grain of salt. Also, obviously someone's going to be defensive in this kind of a case, but what he said was so interesting and made so much sense that I felt really a duty to report on it and offer, kind of his side of the story. And what his side of the story was is that this couple wasn't married long enough for the wife to get her green card. I believe it's 2 years minimum for that to happen. And he said there is an exception in that rule for people who have had physicality in their relationship. So his claim was that she was using these allegations to get citizenship in the United States. That's really yucky. Obviously, this is very dark. This is very icky stuff. And no matter what, it's really none of my business or anyone else's what happened in their marriage. But people were so invested. And this guy, I could hear in his voice how hurt he was that people thought this about him. I could hear how scared he was. This man was terrified for his livelihood, for his job. He had a very public job where you have to, connect with people and be likable in your community, which so I understood, why he would want to get his side of the story out there. And again, I could really tell that he believed that that's why she was making these allegations. So I reported that story. And then the wife and her lawyer responded to me again, and I reported what they said. So no wonder the network didn't want me out there putting this stuff out there. They want to make this show of these happy, cute couples who get married in 90 days and then live eh, happily ever after, to quote the spinoff, right? So if I'm reporting what's the negativity in the relationships, then that kind of burst their little bubble, right? It wasn't just that particular story either. In my experience, really, on the phone with someone for 45 minutes, almost an hour, hearing their innermost thoughts and their feelings and how upset they are about what's really going down and the stuff that I'm reporting on, it really started to wear on me. Being so visible with the cast and stuff too, them all hating on me. I'm not, if you haven't figured this out yet, you maybe haven't listened to or watched all of the episodes, but I just don't really have the stomach to be that like unlikable, gossipy, talk about other people in a negative kind of a way. I don't like to do that, mostly just because I don't like to look desperate and gross. It's not even some moral high ground, but this stuff was all felt really bad. Like I would wake up and read these news stories of people being abused and going to jail and fighting, that families breaking up, these unbelievable things happening to real people that we had gotten to know on the show. And it really started to make me just feel terrible. I'd get up and read these stories and try to figure out what to cover. And, some days I think, well, maybe let's try to find some more positive stories today, or it can be cutesy, like my Mean Girls thing. Make it fun and make it lighthearted. There really just wasn't much of a way to do that anymore. So it ended very abruptly for me, at least, because I said, I can't do this anymore. I want to go back to just sitting down on Sunday and Monday nights and watching the little show that I've been watching forever and ever, and not know whether the people are really got married, not know the horrible, terrible things that have gone down in their lives. I just want to watch a nice show and feel cute and good about it. You know, there's something to be said for that. Why do I always have to, like with Total Divas and the wrestling thing too? Like, just have a hobby. It's fine. We don't have to go work in it. And I am very proud of some of the work that I did getting the real story out there. We kind of busted some of the cast on some things that they were pretty steadfast about. So, I don't know. Again, that is aggressive, and so I should have expected exactly what I got. And that's where I learned that I don't want to do this anymore. I kept doing my YouTube channel and Christy reports after that. I tried to do some of the same stuff. I did not cover or touch 90 Day Fiancé in any way anymore. But I started covering like Mama June and Dance Moms and shows that turned out to be even darker, more toxic than 90 Day Fiancé. And we've talked through some of those. You guys can go back and listen or watch to how all that turned out. But man, good thing that I didn't call this podcast Call Her Happy, because that would just not be very accurate. We're getting to that now, but I guess if I would sit and talk for 30 to 45 minutes every week about how happy I am, and again, going to Pilates and drinking my green juice and just watching 90 Day Fiancé and not knowing anything about the cast, it wouldn't be a very popular podcast. So thank you guys so much for listening and helping me talk it out as we do every week. I thought this was gonna be a little darker and more negative even than it was, but you all helped me find some bright spots that I'm just going to make sure I think about when I kind of look back to this period of time. So thank you so much. If you're listening, then you have missed out on my golden doodle hair today. I do look like a dog, which is just fine, especially considering the subject matter. So remember, you can always watch on YouTube. That's also a great place to leave a comment. Are you guys, do you watch 90 Day Fiancé? Have you seen the change in the show over the years? Did you watch 90 Day Fiancé News Daily? Do you miss it? I don't. I know I could do it today on my channel and it would go. And we are not going to be doing that. So don't go look for it. But you can go look at all my other interviews and see what you want the behind the scenes scoop on. I will be back again next week. Thank you again for listening or watching. This is available anywhere you get your podcasts. And I really appreciate it. So thank you so much. And I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.